3, 2, 1. Welcome to Through the Window of Eurovision contest. Turkey, 10 points. Hello, everyone. This is 𝘗𝘯𝘪𝘥𝘦. I am the coordinator of Through the Window project, and welcome. I would love to welcome you to Intersectional Pride conversation and our closing party. Actually, I am let me introduce myself also in this way. I am bold, butch bitch today. We can call bitch or queen. I prefer both. And I have kids, but you cannot see them now. Yes, so happy Pride to you all. I would like to inform you we have translation from English to Turkish. You can click on interpretation on the bottom right of the screen and choose English or Spanish to hear, and you have to unmute the original audio. And also we have sign language in Turkish. Thank you, ML, and welcome with being us. So now I would love to pass the microphone to Ömer Tevfik Erten, the creator of Through the Window project. Now, Ömer, it's all with you. We cannot hear you, darling. Yes.
Okay. Şimdi herkese merhaba. Bu anı paylaştığımız için çok mutluyum. Benim adım Ömer Tevfik Erten. Through the Window projesinin küratörüyüm. Aslında bir sanatçı ve aktivistim.
Ömer'cim sesin gitti beni duyuyorsan. Ömer'cim. Ömer, can you see us? Can you hear us? Okay. I should call him. Şu anda arıyorum. Ne güzel de anlatıyor canım. Heh. Aşkım hello, çok güzel anlatıyorsun ama seni asla duyamıyoruz. Ama seni görmek çok güzel. Bilmem, kendini belki mute etmişsindir, ondandır. Hadi bakalım sesini aç. Belki duyarız şimdi.
Şimdi duyabiliyor musunuz?
Konuş bakalım. Duyuyor muyuz?
Şimdi duyabiliyor musunuz?
Tamam. Yes, şimdi duyuyoruz. Perfect.
Okay, baştan mı alayım? Okay, tamam. Herkese merhaba. Bu anı paylaştığımız için gerçekten çok mutluyum. Benim adım Ömer Tevfik Erten. Through the Window projesinin küratörüyüm. Aslında bir sanatçı ve aktivistim. Bence Through the Window'un çok uzun zamandır, yani Through the Window çok uzun zamandır hayata geçmeyi bekliyordu. Kısa sürede bu organizasyonu kurabilmemizin en önemli sebebi yaptığı işle varoluşu arasında güçlü bir ağ kuran insanların bir araya gelmesinden kaynaklanıyor. Biz inandığımız bir projeye imza attık. Parçası olduğum için gerçekten çok gurur duyuyorum hepimizle. İnanıyorum ki içinden geçtiğimiz bu yasaklı günleri verdiğimiz kolektif mücadeleyle hatırlayacağız. Vardık, varız, var olacağız. Bize finansal olarak destek sağlayan kurumlara, iletişimde olduğumuz kurum çalışanlarına, fikirleriyle Through the Window'un gelişmesine katkı sağlayan tüm dostlarımıza ve tüm katılımcılara çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bugün bir son değil, asıl yeni başlıyoruz. Bizi takip etmeye devam edin.
Thank you, Ömer. Okay, now it's off interpretation. So we just put the works online of the second cycle of the exhibition, through the window exhibition. You can check from our Instagram and Facebook accounts, and please do. And Simone, are you ready, darling, to read the names of the artists first? Then we have two artists with us, then we will talk with them. So let me start with the Turkish artists who are with us with this cycle. Alev Ersan, Ahmet Rüstem Ekici, Can Küçük, Diren Demir, Elçin Acun, Hakan Sorar, İsmet Köroğlu, Mert Çağıl Türkay, Onur Karaoğlu ve Ünal Bostancı. And Simone, yeah.
Perfect. So I'll read out the Dutch contributing artist. Congratulations. Thank you so much for being part of this. So from the Dutch side, or in the Netherlands, are Dandelion Igoza, Mala Badi, 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦, Ernestine Noli, Nash Caldera, Quinny Lay, Caleb Batta, Hala Namer. It feels so official. It's like I'm reading names on a commemoration. Yeah. Sorry for that. Okay. Sadika El Khahal and Mapengo Namodo. Those are the contributing artists on the Dutch side. And yes, really, congratulations. And thank you so much for participating. Your works are really amazing.
Onur is with us, Simone.
Mm-hmm.
So would you like to talk with Onur?
Yes.
And yeah. Or
so basically we've asked two artists, both in Turkey and in the Netherlands, to say just like very briefly something about their work. Not in any way trying to hierarchize these voices, because we want to hear you all about your work, but to get to the conversation. So Onur, if you want to share a little bit about your work, that would be amazing.
Yes, of course. Thank you again for everything. This is great to be here now. First, I want to say this is the second year of Through the Window, and which is amazing. Like, I mean, you did it last year and it's happening this year, and I'm like so looking forward to it. The future of it. It's very like hope generating what you are doing. I did a video piece for this project this year. I was in my house the whole time, like throughout the pandemic, and I have a neighbor living just across my building, a queer neighbor who is in the like participants in this conversation now here, 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦. I say hi. We collaborated with 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦, and like being a neighbor, being a queer neighbor, what does it mean? How we are like seeing like ourselves through the eyes of the others across our buildings, how they are seeing us and how they are affecting us. I was like searching for these things, and also that reminded me of something from my childhood. I had a crush when I was 10 before I came out. A textile workshop worker working across my building where I was living when I was a child. I was 10, but I was so much in love with that guy. For the whole summer, I spent the whole summer on the window looking at him, like waiting for him to appear. And it reminded me of that, like my friend 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦, now a queer friend of mine living across my building. What does it mean? What does being a queer neighbor mean? And how we are like communicating, and how our memories and how our living here affecting us, like in this neighborhood, in this like set of mind during the pandemic, because we are all the time at home and we are looking at each other from the window, and we see our like sad moments, beautiful moments, and it reminded me. I mean, there is one thing I wanted to share from the video. I was very patient when I was 10, without knowing what I was doing, but I was waiting and I was learning. Being patient for a queer person is very important, and we are learning it. And like that patience is making us something over the time, and that is like part of our strength. I know, and also this project, the strength of like people are coming together. There's so many people, artists, and like all the participants of the project are have a different kind of strength that comes from that patience. I think that was one thing that I was like trying to emphasize in the video. And I can only say this, maybe I would like to thank you all for like inviting me and like making me part of this. And I know that it's very hopeful for the future, and I'm like very like celebrating mode with you, because I mean, it's a celebration of our existence, our goals and our hopes for the future. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe that also is a moment to do an extra shout out to everybody who is here tonight with us from or in Turkey, with everything that is happening at this current moment. Patience is definitely the word, I guess, to, yeah, having to respond with patience, with fierceness at the same time, but practicing patience just because that's what is forced upon. So thank you so much for that. And I shared your work in the chat so that if people want to go and look directly, they can. We also wanted to invite 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦 to say a little bit about their work. Thank you, 𝘗𝘪.
Hi, so nice to be here with all of you. Like this pandemic in some way had like really showed us a new ways to communicate, and new ways to be together, and that is perhaps the good side there. I have participated with Come Out, which is a letter, a poetic letter addressed to my parents, in which I'm literally coming out. The work is addressing the issue. No, it's not really an issue. It's about love. It says that love simply shouldn't be conditioning, shouldn't be restraining, shouldn't make you compromise anything, which is an ideal way of love. And we're not really, I mean, everybody is used to a certain compromise usually, but through the work I'm trying to, I feel like we all should always try to reach an ideal, although it is never reachable in a way. So Come Out is the embodiment of my practice, where I find, and also my lifestyle or my philosophy in life, where I can't really make borders between things. So a personal story becomes my work of art, and then my work of art reflects back on my practice and effects. With this work, I'm simply kind of asking the question of what is the limit for love? When does love become like limiting us from becoming ourselves, our true self? And so I've been going through a lot of unconventional types of loving, and at a certain point, a breakup has happened, a big breakup in my life, which gave me the strength also to sort of repel on the love that I endured to my parents, basically affirming my own principle of, you know, how love should be unrestricted and unconditional. So that is sort of the side of things, and the activist part of it comes where I'm basically talking about queerism as and fundamentally as sort of kind of, well, with queerism theory, you say that you have to queer your own identity in order to be able to actually fight the bigger issue over there, because it's so embedded in us. And that is the same here. I'm saying that we have to queer our own love, our own way of loving, so we could actually be able to not fight, but repel against the bias in the way we love. I'm very, I have shared a lot of content through Instagram. Sorry if I'm taking long, but this is the last thing I'm gonna say. Okay, so I've shared a lot of content through this pandemic online on Instagram, doing like makeup home, doing my own dress ups, stuff like that. And Went Through the Window invited me to participate. And when it was, when I've been told that it is gonna be on Instagram, that felt to me even a more connection to how I started to socially introduce myself as such. So I'm very appreciative that I could actually platform this work through you and to be connecting to multiple labs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much today. Okay. How are you feeling? How's everybody? Those I see seem to be okay, seem to be good. I'm just going to continue saying thank you. People who have been here through the window previously know that I continue to say thank you throughout the night for you that you're here, because you're making Through the Window happen, right? Let's go to our speakers. We have 4 wonderful speakers: Beren Azizi, Dino Suhonic, Emrah Karakush, and Olympia Lattuparisa. And you will learn about their practice through our conversation. If you have been before, you also know that our theme of the night today, Intersectional Pride, is not a theme that we discussed in a sort of abstract or conceptual way where we try to sort of debate with each other the topics or the themes, but really what we try to do is that the theme is a hold for everybody's practice who has been invited. So we're really learning from those who are present and also engaging afterwards, after the introductions, in a conversation to see where we differentiate in the struggles and where we overlap. Should I say again that we have translation and sign language interpretation, Turkish sign language interpretation. Thank you so much for being here. And I should also give an audio description of myself. I'm a white person with blonde hair. I'm wearing a tank top and there's some gold glitter on my eyebrows. And that said, let's go to Beren Azizi. Thank you so much for being here.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, so let me start with my audio description. I'm Beren, and I'm in my room right now in Vienna. So there is some gray light here. I'm wearing a strappy cotton blues, and I wear a tulle blazer with bright flower figures. And my hair and eyes are black and my skin is white. I'm 30 years old. And today I will talk about with you on 3 subjects. So if you prefer, Simone, let's start with your question.
Yes, for sure. So we wanted to start with Beren, because last conversation we talked about activism and the university. So we talked about the uprising at 𝘗𝘳𝘪 University, and we thought it would be fitting to start again then this conversation with Beren, because Beren has been one of the co-founders of the LGBT club at the 𝘗𝘳𝘪 University. So I would like to actually start just with that. How were you part of the founding of the LGBT club, and how was it possible to found the club at the time where now the club has been banned? And how would you also, give meaning to that trajectory from your perspective?
Yeah. So let me start with about how the club was closed first. So maybe you can find answer of your all questions. So let me first say that this club was not shut down overnight. Only one single appointed rector did not close this club, and he could not do it by alone. This club has been subjected to serious legal and institutional discrimination since the day it was founded in 2014. I would like to tell you my testimony as one of the founding members of this club. I want you to hear what we have been through from the very beginning. This will show you how the right and freedom of association of LGBTI+ students in Turkey does not exist in practice, contrary to what is written on the law documents. Firstly, as you know, the official name of our closed club is Boğaziçi University Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans, Intersex, and Plus Studies Club. We thought actually in 2040 a lot about this name issue while we were writing our club by law, I mean our regulation. Of course, we will not be the first LGBTI plus student club in Turkey, but we will be the first student club. Its name whose official name included the expression of LGBT plus. Normally, we were clearly expected not to use this expression openly. It was hoped that we would instead use a euphemism, I mean, in 𝘗𝘯𝘪𝘥𝘦 or in explicit expression for our official name, because the official names of the LGBTI plus student clubs established up to that time were always like this. We rejected this and choose a club name that was boring, formal, plain wording. This is the most disturbing thing. Faggots, queers, homos, you know, perverts, in quotation, take themselves seriously and do so by talking openly about themselves. So we do that. The phobic administrator of Boğaziçi University, who did not want our club to be funded, started to occupy us with their ridiculous questions after they handed over the club's funding petition in which they saw our official name and provisional bylaws. According to our university's central regulation, a student club must be sustainable in terms of its number of members. So this means that the purpose of the club should be encouraging for its potential member, and more than a certain number of members can sign up for this club each year. So they asked us that the club had the expression of LGBTI plus in its official name, and whether we were sustainable in terms of potential members. What they mean was that a very small part of the society consists of LGBTI plus, so we are minority. Why should we why should they allocate resources to us? Because we are not sustainable. They don't really operate this sustainability principle when it comes to other clubs. But when it comes to LGBT clubs, they do it systematically, because we know this system previously. The same was done the LGBTI plus who wanted to establish a club at Middle Eastern Technical University. So the establishment of our club was not their club was not abroad because they were not sustainable. In other words, this sustainable principle is a systematic excuse for LGBT students' right to organize first. In response, we say to them, we are not LGBT club, we are LGBT studies club. And today, nowadays, many cis heterosexual people may want to conduct LGBT studies because LGBT rights are human rights. Finally, our club was officially established. In terms of the number of members, this club had the highest number of members in the university. We have hundreds of members. Neither we nor they accepted this. Our peers saw us center of making a speech for human rights against the oppressive policies of the current government, which is AKP government. Even after proving that the excuse of sustainability is a fallacy, discrimination has not left us. If a club is established for the first time, it has to remain in the status of candidate or applicant club for a certain period of time. The club has to spend this certain period by completing its legal obligation. What are these legal obligations, for instance, to be able to recruit a certain number of members every year, to be able to carry out the activities written in its bylaw, to report them regularly, etc. The candidate club that achieves this obligation have to become actually the permanent or full member club after 2 years with the decision of the directorship. Although our club fulfilled all its legal obligations, before newly appointed rector Melih Bulu, previous rector Mehmet Özkan, who was also appointed by the AKP, and his sister was an AKP deputy as well, illegally did not approve the change of our club's status from the candidate one to full member, permanent one. We learned this graceful news from Melih Bulu on the day he closed the club. He said that this club was already a candidate club. The former rectorship did not make this club a full member one. Then I closed it, he said. Let's not forget this. The end of a club that has been forced to self-censor its activities since the day it was founded, has not been treated equally, and had to deal with all kinds of mobbing and irregularities. Human rights and Turkish democracy have been trampled on. I will not forget it. And I just want to you, neither should you, please. My answer like that.
But would you say that there's because if you describe it like this, the trajectory seems almost natural, right? In the sense of being continuously discriminated against until the banning. Like, it doesn't seem that there is a big difference between 2014, the founding of the club, as of now. But would you say that this is true, or would you say that there's a change, a shift that really made this ban currently possible?
I don't think so. Yes, we can claim that because of after the coup d'etat, or after the shift in the Turkish policy, which happened after the coup d'etat and after the Gezi resistance or the FETÖ, blah, blah. Yeah, we can find a lot of reason for this change, but I don't think so, because I can see easily as a member of this club continuation from its beginning to end. Because when I look at how this club closed, I cannot claim that it was closed by just one single person's decision, but it is the decision piling up on each other till this day. So this is the story of the right to organization. They always try to close us, not just even the students club, but also let's just look at the history of the Turkish LGBT rights organization from the beginning, 90s. It was always faced to some, I don't know, issues. They want to try to close them. Even the decision of the court decision about the Lambda was, it was said that you can be open, but as long as you don't promote being LGBT to the society. So.
And because you've also been involved with Istanbul Pride organization, also Istanbul Pride has been banned officially since 2016, I believe. And it's of course ongoing, as we see now with the picnics, sorry for the noise in the background, happening in 𝘗𝘯𝘪, one of the neighborhoods in Istanbul, but also other parks. And how would you see your work as an organizer at the university and your work as an organizer with Istanbul Pride? What would you want to share about the work with Istanbul Pride?
With the collaboration with Balkan Pride, or in the region, between the Middle East and Balkan, as a candidate member of the European Union in a country such like that, you mean?
Well, maybe first to stay with Turkey, the Istanbul Pride, and but then for those who do not know, has also been involved with the Balkan region Pride. So it would be interesting to talk about the intersection, of course, between Istanbul Pride and your work with the Balkan region Pride.
So thank you. Firstly, this is a very good question, and thank you for asking it. So you know that for years, Istanbul was a metropolis where the biggest pride parade of the Middle East and the Balkans was held without any police protection. And LGBTI plus people could walk freely on the city's busiest and the largest streets, and in the city's most famous squares, such as Taksim Square. And until the marches were banned in, if I'm not wrong, 2050, or 2040, one of them, there had been no incidents of civil violence against the march. It is said that in 2030, the year of the Gezi resistance, the number of people participating in the parade in Taksim reached the hundreds of thousands. So this was extremely surprising for the relatively conservative Christians, Balkans, and the conservative Muslim Middle East. The fact that such peaceful marches can be held without any police protection in Istanbul, which had been the center of the caliphate for years, and then later the cultural capital of the Republic of Turkey, which is Istanbul. So this example, Pride March, set a democratic example for everyone. So in addition, some of the countries in the Balkans become newly members of European Union. Some are still candidates and some are potential candidates. So both Turkey and the Balkans were countries in the European Union harmonization process. Beside, and as we learned from our activist friends in the Balkans, it was much more difficult to march without police protection in Balkan countries. They were amazed at these free marches in Istanbul. Therefore, if a Balkan Pride were to be organized among the candidate countries of European Union, one of the places where it could be done in the most peaceful and democratic way could be Istanbul, we thought. This could actually be a really important, could be, but not, actually a really important turning point for Turkey, Turkish candidacy process. However, the conflict within the government, as you know, the paradigm shift in AKP and the deterioration of the old coalition, the AKP's formation of new coalition with the extreme racist party, MHP, and the alienation from liberal democratic values, the Gezi resistance, the coup d'etat in 2015, and the state of emergency regime. So Turkey has experienced a serious authoritarianism since 2015. So the prides we attended in the countries in Balkans were very surprising for us as well. These were prides, which is unfamiliar to us because where the police boiled a wall of flesh, they were carried out as a requirements of European Union harmonization process and with the efforts of activists. And as you know, Russian state sexist and phobic intervention was much more pronounced due to the religious affiliation factor in Balkans. But in Turkey, on the other hand, the atmosphere was different until the paradigm shift, as I said before, after the 2050, which was also reflected in foreign policy. So in what we are, to me, what we are experiencing right now, a Russian type of anti-propaganda started in Turkey as a result of the AKP's forced coalition with MHP and other extreme racist parties, groups hostile to the European Union and the West. These artificially produced propagandas, which called for extremely violence against LGBT people, used right-wing and left-wing populist language, while a party claiming to be left-wing said also that homosexuality was a bourgeois residue. And right-wing racist parties say that it was an attack on the DNA of Turks. As a result of anti-Semitism and xenophobia, Turkey deviated from the EU harmonization process after the paradigm shift that I said before. So European Union membership, which is our common identity with our activist friends in Balkan countries, is currently on paper for Turkey. And at this point, I appeal to activists. This part is very important. I really would like to say I really appeal to you as well. And politicians, activists in European countries, do not discard us. Turkey is still an EU candidate country. Potential enlargement of European Union reach to Turkey as well, could reach. And your anger at Hungarian government, for instance, nowadays is magnified. Munich has decorated the entire city with rainbow flag. And people are angry at the Hungarian government's phobia and they are voicing against it. On the one hand, this shows that they are protesting Hungary, but on the other hand, this actually shows that they see Hungary as a part of their family. They do not accept that a EU member country could be LGBT phobic. So during the football match, they go down the field and open the rainbow flag. So would you consider Turkey as a part of the EU and fight the phobia of its government as if it were their own country? Or they already see this country as the country of, I don't know, out of Western Alliance or something like that, outside the Europe from the very beginning. So transnational solidarity in this concept means not just solidarity between the nations, it is the international solidarity, but transnational solidarity means seeing your partner as an equal part and come to our football matches with your rainbow flag as well.
I think that is maybe a question I should ask you. Also, Oner is asking you if you would like to slow down a little bit in talking for interpretation. But now that you're speaking indeed of this idea of the transnationalism, and it's not just nations among nations, right? It's showing up at the football match if you really want to go to a football match. But I was wondering indeed, like how on a very like practical, concrete level in your daily lives, are you indeed having this transnational solidarity? Like, how do you experience this? When you speak of activists in the Balkan region, for example, is it that you're continuously in touch, or are there certain organizations that you work in together in order to really, yeah, build a front together?
So,
or
yeah, I'm doing my MA in history right now in Vienna, and I have been here since the September. I'm sorry, I'm just speaking a bit fast, so I need to. Okay, and I have been here since the September. So what I faced in here is that I cannot see any anger of their faces. They just normalize phobia in Turkey. They just accept its normalization. And so they just ask that, oh, how can you survive in a situation such like that, blah, blah, blah, blah. So it shows me that people cannot understand what they mean, the transnational solidarity. Transnational means that there is some solidarity beyond and below, and I don't know, more value, more important than the being a part of nation or being a part of nationalist identities such as religion or race, whatever you want to call. So transnational nationality, as an LGBT human being in a country in Europe, in one of the country in Europe, feel the same, I don't know, at least try to feel the same discrimination exposed to Turkish LGBT people, as in the case with the Hungary. So in a Hungarian case, I can easily see that. So people very, very worried about, very upset and sad and anger against the Hungarian governments. But when it comes to Turkey, they just understand the homophobia of Turkish government. Any kinds of homophobia cannot be understandable and cannot be tolerable. So, yeah.
But I think that we might speak in our conversation all together a bit more about your also anti-TERF activism, so trans-exclusionary radical feminism, as they call themselves, because I think this actually is a perfect moment, also considering time, but also in terms of the topic, to go to 𝘗𝘯𝘪𝘥𝘦, because this idea, right, of the European Union harmonization using that or employing that really to get LGBT solidarity is really something that Dino has also been working on, thinking about homonationalism. But also, Dino, I immediately thought of some of the topics you have been talking, thinking, and writing about in your practice. And thank you so much, but we'll come back to you. Because the way, of course, that Baron is talking about solidarity, it's interesting to see, right, in the Netherlands that homophobia is very much used sort of to inspire people to be in solidarity. But this solidarity is always at the cost of mostly Islamic people in the Netherlands, and Islamophobia rises with the sort of anger that comes against homophobia in the Netherlands. So Dino, I just want to bring you in that conversation at this heightened moment. Do you want to say something in response to that immediately, or do you want me to ask like a more simple question and say like, okay, you're the executive director of Maruf. Do you want to say what this is?
Maybe we'll come to that later.
Yeah.
But actually, it's I think simple. If people want to know more, we can share the website and I can talk more about it later on. But indeed, I'm Dino 𝘗𝘯𝘪𝘥𝘦, director of Maruf, which is a international queer Muslim platform. We work with queer Muslims in the Netherlands, but also in Europe mostly. But we also have connections with queer Muslims from Muslim majority countries as well. Yeah, so I actually love the conversation that has already started. It's the kind of conversation that really gets me very passionate on both activist and academic level, and I try to, you know, of course we have to talk about the practicalities, but at the same time I'm always afraid of reducing the subject to a simple solution. So when I'm hearing this, and Beren has already mentioned it, and you also implied it in your question, homonationalism kind of implicates the sexual exceptionalism, which ignores homophobia at home while projecting homophobia on the nations abroad. And I'm, in particular, in my research, I was interested in how homonationalism is actually part of the Muslim question. And the Muslim question resonates with the Jewish question, and in Europe at the end of the 19th and the 20th century. And one might say that it's still going on. But I was interested in how, through homonationalism, Muslim sexuality in general was constructed. And as you said, when, for example, people in the Netherlands, especially queers and queer supporting individuals in the Netherlands, are in solidarity with Turkish activists or LGBT community, you would say they are human rights embracing and really truly in solidarity with Turkish LGBT. And while that can be on a performative level very, very attractive and comforting for local Turkish LGBT communities, I have to say that we should all, especially Turkish LGBT activists, should look through that solidarity that is often extremely performative. And it might have some kind of effects, a tweet that a politician tweeted, or a Dutch politician trying to attend Pride in Istanbul and then filming it on their mobile phone and posting it, or whatever, a mini protest here in the Netherlands. The same people very often exclude not only local Turkish communities or Muslim communities in general, they're also actually saying and pleading often for Turkey not to enter the EU. And so it's kind of interesting for me to see, like, what kind of solidarity do we need for each other? The solidarity that helps you with one part of your identity, but then on the other side, when you travel to Netherlands, how much of a hustle a Turkish queer activist have to go through administrationally, bureaucratically, or whatever, just to enter the European Union or Schengen area. So why don't we talk about the whole package that we need to have? A package of not only talking about decriminalizing homosexuality, legalizing different ways of queer relations, but also talking about social acceptance on a social level, and how much the government and the state has to be involved in that process, which is the case in the Netherlands. So when you talk about, again, homonationalism, you see that homonationalism is used by states in the Western Europe to regulate queer experience, to make it a kind of exceptional desire, as 𝘗𝘳𝘪𝘥𝘦, who coined this term, said, that queer become regulatory or even a biopolitical project and ascendancy of whiteness. So in its core, and I'm a little bit provocative right now, don't blame me for that. I don't want to ridiculize local organizing in Turkey or any other country around the world. But in general, we have to ask ourselves, is the way how we organize our queer movements, and especially Pride, that's something that could potentially be used for such a greater project, where states in the West would say, look at them, Turkey is not having a Pride, so they are not EU ready. And on the other side, the government in terms some other countries are using that on the other side of the biopolitical project, where they say, you see, if we allow this, our nation will collapse, our culture will collapse. This is the only battlefield that they use to say how they differ from so-called West. It's highly performative. And yes, it has tremendous, terrible consequences for people on the ground. But at the same time, we have to ask ourselves continuously, is the way how we organize and even call ourselves LGBT community, what is that? How queer is that to label ourselves in terms of not only, as I said, decriminalize and legalize, but also afterwards? Aren't we stuck in these categories? And isn't that actually at a certain point limiting us to go further than where we are right now?
So would you almost say that calling yourself LGBTQIA plus at this moment is a servitude to nationalism?
It has a potential to be, to create queer as a regulatory body, to create queer as a biopolitical project. And again, I'm not against people who are identifying as such. I'm not against people who are using queer nowadays as an umbrella term for all these letters. I'm against people that are using queer as to create new ways of normativity. Normativities that can be such an easy tool to measure if somebody is white enough, if somebody is European enough, Western enough, and so on. It creates such a bad dynamics where queer bodies are at the core of the conflict between the political egomaniacs that we see from Russia to a lot of other countries, Turkey, but also in Europe. And yeah, I think homo-nationalism in itself, it never goes separate from homo-colonialism, which is Momin Rahman's concept, and gay international term that is highly debated in academia and activist circle, but coined by Joseph Massad to say that how international human rights organizations from the global north and west are appropriating transnational understanding of sexuality, which is for me extremely interesting to see how these concepts, that's the second reason why I'm against these labels and concepts that we use from the westernized way of understanding sexuality, is that they become a norm. And everybody on the local ground who is not agreeing with it, who is not fitting into that, is being left alone. And yeah, we should be careful about that. That's the thing that I want to share.
It just makes me think that at this moment, the fact that we are able to speak to each other and have been able to speak with each other in Through the Window or with Through the Window is in itself a problem, to go with your line of thought, right? Like the fact that we think that we know that we can mean something similar with queer also means that we are installing a meaning from, in a way, top down. But then at the same time, I really do wonder, how do we recognize the fact that when we do meet queer people in any different kinds of intersections that we might come, we do recognize something, right? There is an embodiment of queerness. And I want us to be, I totally go with you, but then I also want us to go back to the body.
Yeah.
And to the embodied meeting of each other.
Love it, love it. And I'm all into that. But if you go to the body, there are a few dangers of it. When a problem becomes too individualized, then we forget about the structural things that we are experiencing. Then it becomes anecdotal. And it has a potential for a neoliberal project as well, where this the way how LGBT politics queer politics are framed in the Western world. That's why I'm surprised why people that are not that are anti-capitalist and anti-neoliberal are actually making excuse of accepting LGBTI politics as framed in the West. So Back to the Body has an amazing potential of understanding how everything which is odd, how everything which is non-normative is being hurted. And we have to talk about that. We have to have those conversations around why these bodies are actually not fitting anywhere, and why these bodies, even without organizing our queer spaces through art, through activism, through academia, how we do not lose bodies that are not within our circles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not artist myself, but I love being with queer Muslim artists, people that are expressing themselves through art. I'm partially in academia, and I love the way how, and in activism the same, but there is a potential in all of these circles to create kind of elite, to create kind of a own bubble, which is good for your own and for the community building. But what about those people that are left out in all of these circles? So if queerness is, and I think somebody said it in the beginning, one of the art, I don't remember the name. If queerness is queering the love, we also should think about, queering the way how we organize, how we think through this. If queerness is a continuous questioning, if continuous fight against all kind of normalizations, then why do we accept those normalizing processes in some way or another? If it's easier, I accept it. But if it's a way of escaping the complexity of what people are experiencing, then I'm against it. And that's what I see. For example, I just want to give a practical example because this became a little bit too abstract. Sorry for that. Queer Muslims, for example, believing queer Muslims do not belong anywhere because religion is primitive. Religious people are primitive because whatever government is using Islam as their way and conservative understanding of religion, I'm against religion. We don't belong to the white mainstream LGBTI movement, but we also don't belong to the secular movements that's from back home. So for example, a lot of Turkish, Moroccan, Bosnian, I'm currently in Bosnia, so I'm conflicted with so many thoughts right now. Even by saying this, I'm also thinking about the local context here, and I'm kind of contradictory in that, but that's for another time. There are so many people that are not included in this conversation because where do they belong? If you're not secular, how can you be an LGBT activist? I'm like, okay, this is very interesting. We are busy with such a complex project of queering religion, queering Islam, for example. And it's such a, if somebody is doing a job that might not be visible, but extremely dangerous, even in a gay heaven like Netherlands, we are being threatened. We have people that are obscuring our work, even from the government. Even the municipality, people that are sitting in Amsterdam municipality that are prouding themselves online for being queer friendly, they are boycotting us. They are putting our name in the most nastiest, shittiest way. So what do we have on gay marriage? What do we have on these all legal things that we fixed in the Netherlands, that we thought that we fixed in the Netherlands? How is that working out for racialized queers and religious or spiritual, or however you want to call it, Muslims that are identifying as queer?
Dino, there was something that you said, and I'm sort of cutting you off again. Sorry, I'm trying to keep time this time,
Yeah.
which is the most terrible thing I've ever done. But there's something about also, you said, and maybe I'm stuck on the idea of bodies, and of course you're right, like thinking back to the structures, but there's something of the meeting, and there was something where I was thinking about nightlife, right, which are the spaces of non-normative togetherness. But then I was also immediately reminded of how Through the Window has been such, at least something, a lesson for me, because we started Through the Window from this idea that our nightlife is closed, and that of course the people who work in nightlife need to find a way otherwise to stay alive. But then also one of the fruits of organizing online gathering has been really that we can include also, hopefully, those people who are excluded from the nightlife, which of course are very many people, but one of the aspects, of course, is disability, and the way that the architecture of nightlife is super ableist. That's just one element. And I just wanted to evoke that too, right? That because as another sort of concrete example of how even those spaces that we might imagine as the non-normative spaces of freedom are actually still continuously excluding. I would like to go to Emrah Karakush. Are you there, Emrah?
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah, okay. I cannot see you,
Hi.
sorry. Hi. Oh, there you are. Beautiful. Emrah, so we're trying to keep time, but when we talked for almost 2 hours, I think. And I have like multiple sheets of notes. So help me.
Okay,
but
I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can start with audio description. I'm a brown bearded person, identifying as queer. There are flowers behind me. I wear a black t-shirt, black shirt. I have a cat that may appear in the video. She's named Arzu. So let me begin by two objections that I would like to make in this conversation. Oh, there she is. Sorry. So I feel like actually we are reproducing communalism even in this conversation. It's inescapable by actually using repetitively the term Turkish LGBTs when we identify queer and trans people in Turkey, living in Turkey. So I feel the urge to object to that kind of identification. Additionally, I would like to talk about the reference to Masab that Dino provided. Actually, the author who actually argued that LGBT rights organizations are inflicting violence on queer who are not activists or local queers by actually inviting Western politics into their territories. So I think this is a kind of actually disembodied argument that actually reduces the lived experience of queer people to certain categories, certain Western genealogies that actually that are translated rather than imported to local context. So many people, many LGBT activists in Turkey today translate these kind of terms and actually question their colonial ideologies. And sometimes they might identify as queer, but that queer doesn't mean the queer in the Western context. So we should be aware of those kind of ideas that actually do not speak to the local experiences.
Yeah, which immediately happens also because we speak English, right? I mean, and we're not speaking in, for example, the Turkish queer slang, if I should say it like that, Lübnanca, if I say it correct. Yeah. See, I do not say it correct, which is exactly why I should not say it correct, because it is a localized, embodied language then.
Yeah.
There was a thought I had, but it's escaping me. Maybe...
I can start with what I'm doing actually. If it's gonna make it easy.
If it's going to make it easy. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you something in relationship to the sort of comments that you just made, indeed, about your research. I don't know if you want to start speaking about your research in terms of the houses of Kurdish queer sex workers, or more so the violent effects, the everyday violent effects on Kurdish life.
Okay, I started this project actually. By the way, I'm a PhD candidate in the School of Anthropology at the University of Arizona. So I conduct research about the lives of queer and transgender Kurds living in Istanbul and Diyarbakir. I started this research actually after seeing 10 years of experience and seeing the apparent racism in Turkish LGBT movement in Turkey, and how it structured certain silences and exclusions within itself. And I thought that actually when I went to Diyarbakir, I would find similar arguments that I would have, or any kind of lived experiences that might resonate those kind of experiences. But when I went there, the discussion or the lived experience were completely different. It was actually prioritizing the discussions around violence rather than sexual subjectivity or gendered subjectivity. So one of the findings that I actually acquired through the months of research there, I found that actually the way that they conceptualize race or violence is informed by the colonial ideas, where actually you would find violence as produced in social life, but through the history of repetitive, oppressive attacks by the Turkish state. So the way that they perceive actually the violent attempts of the police in Istanbul is completely different from the perspectives actually defended by the Turkish LGBT people in major cities. They often actually talk about the histories of violence that actually created a kind of laboratory for the Turkish state to actually enhance its capability to regulate, control, or oppress queer and trans people in major cities. So when a trans person is encountered by the police for search purposes, for Kurdish queers, this is meant to be a historical experience that ties to actually Kurdish ways of being queer or trans.
Which then immediately does tie back to what Dina was saying, right? Like if we talk only about queer, then we're completely missing the way that queer bodies, if we call them queer bodies, are violated, which is a racial and colonial history.
Yeah, what I see in Diyarbakir, in Istanbul, is actually beyond what we can understand the identity categories as separate or even converging. They are not even converging, they are created within each other. So I mean, thinking the writings of Marcus Bay, so there is something in transness about being Kurdish, Kurdishness in transness, and transness in Kurdishness. So there's this kind of embodied knowledge that are acquired through the ways in which Kurds have been actually oppressed, and how their actually gendered identities have been restructured actually through the ways that they actually experience those violences. So, I mean, I've been talking about this in another conversation today. So there's a person that I have taught, that I taught during my research, and She's actually ex-guerrilla who fought with the PKK before, and she has done activism in Istanbul as well. She narrated to me a kind of experience of torture for 4 days by the Turkish state. And she told me that actually she realized her body, the limits of her body, the boundaries of her body, of the generation of her subjectivities through the ways that Turkish state touched her body, through electricity, through water, cold water. So this is quite different from the ways that we understand how people actually conceptualize gendered identity or sexual orientation based on coming out processes.
And so you're a researcher, but also I imagine, do you translate this kind of research into conversations in Turkey itself, in the sense that, for example, if you think about, as we talked with Beren about like Istanbul Pride, it seems that this discourse is missing. At least this is what I'm hearing as your criticism, right? Yes. So how, and not to put the burden on you, but how would you say that and those around you, of course, are implementing this criticism in Pride organizing? Yeah, I feel like I have to put square quotes on every word now, but yeah.
In my personal experience, actually, the way that I engaged with activism was the story of silences. So I, for a long time, couldn't speak the way that I experienced gender or sexuality in actually Turkish LGBT circles, because one thing that actually is missing from our conversations is the way that we understand our gender and sexuality experience from the perspective of colonizer. So from the Turkish language, we don't know how to have sex through Kurdish language. This is what my actually a Kurdish trans informant have told me. So this is a fundamental actually hurdle that actually prevents Kurdish queer and trans people. But also when they want to speak from that language, it is often seen as like not queer or not valid enough. Or ultra radical, you know, ultra radical. So understandings of violence, for example, for many Kurdish trans and queer people, violence may be conceptualized as self-defense, running from the genealogies of like guerrilla warfare initiated by the PKK since 1984. But in LGBT movement in Turkey, this kind of conceptualization doesn't actually come into being. So the understanding of violence is standardized.
Yeah, which also then makes me wonder, when we think about also what Beren mentioned in terms of, you know, raising solidarity cross-nationally. Just have your conception of violence in terms of, yeah.
Just to add, during my research, I actually acquainted with Kurdish trans friends and started doing activism right at the middle of our start of the HDK LGBT assembly. This is an assembly that actually works to bring many identities in Turkey, organizing as assemblies, non-hierarchical way. There was this conversation between the Pride Committee and Kurdish trans friends around violence, and that actually created lots of discussions about how actually transphobia and Kurdphobia is apparent among Pride Committee organizers. this year. But I have tons of stories from the subjects who actually narrated me the way that actually Pride Committee members related themselves to Kurdish question for the first, and the members of those political movement involved in those Kurdish rights activism. So this is not a good story. So
no, and it's just that what you said also, like the conception of violence really made me wonder, like how like it immediately bars the potential of international solidarity, right? Like the possibility of Dutch queer people, especially white Dutch queer people, raising solidarity for Kurdish queer people with this conception of violence is almost unimaginable.
Yeah.
So that also could mean, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I mean, I consider, in my personal view, I consider whiteness not as a kind of racial identity, but a materialized experience that actually bodies are involved, discourses are involved. So a Kurdish person may be white as well, as we know it. I mean, so it's not about that kind of like the racial category, but the way that racial category constructs a kind of materiality that actually intentionally or unintentionally excludes those people who are constructed as non-white.
Yeah. But it really does make me wonder, like, if this is an impossibility, this solidarity, there's actually something huge to learn, as Dino was saying, right? Like, if we want to reject and refuse this performative solidarity, then maybe there's something here, like the impossibility of solidarity might be exactly where we need to start looking. However, saying that, let's saying performative solidarity, I'm thinking performance, meaning let's bring Olympia in. Bad bridges. Emrah, thank you so much. Let's continue this conversation. There's also a question in the chat that I think we might be able to come back to when we talk together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Olympia Latiparissa, come on in. So I said performance because you are a performer among many other things. And also, of course, Emrah's, what Emrah was saying about colonialism and also decolonizing your own sexual language in order to be able to speak, to have sex, to be a body, which really applies also to your practice. Do you want to start with an audio description of yourself?
Yes, I will start. Good night, everyone. I'm Olympia, and my hair today is short and pink. It's flamingo pink. And for tonight, I got a new mustache on. So I change it every time I have to perform, or if I like to do it. So for tonight, this is a new one. And I'm wearing a typical Indonesian shirt. And this shirt is for my grandfather also. And yeah, it has, it's really like full of patterns. So that's the thing I want to say about myself now.
And when you're describing your appearance, you immediately actually describe something. You're wearing your grandfather's shirt, and you've did this previously when one of your last actions was around the Moluccas in the Netherlands and the 65-year celebration or commemoration. Do you want to describe this, or did we lose you right now?
No. It is a little bit slow, the connection, I think.
I see, yeah. We'll tell you when we cannot.
Yes, yes, okay, that's good. Yes, I'm wearing this shirt because of I am from the Moluccan Islands. I'm born and raised here in Holland. My grandfather came here in 1951 to the Netherlands, and I'm now here in Rotterdam. And that's where the Moluccan people came in 1951. And they came here, because of the colonialism. And because my grandfather was a soldier for the Dutch army. And the Dutch army, as they call it, the 𝘗𝘯𝘪. So it is like the national Dutch Indies army. And I did a protest. I don't know if you already put that footage, but if they can see it later.
Yes.
In that footage, they followed me with my protest. It's the protest. It's the protest.
Olympia, maybe you can turn off your camera.
The Dutch people, why the Moluccans are over here after, at 65 years, because now it's already 70 years here in Holland. And but on the other side, for me, it was also a protest from against my own people. And again, yes.
Yes, I would recommend maybe turning off your camera so that we can hear you better, because the internet is a bit sketchy.
Okay.
Let's see. So you were talking about the protest.
I'll do that. Yeah. Okay. From the footage, and it was a protest for the Dutch people, but also a protest against my own people, the Moluccan people, because they were like celebrating 65 years here in the Netherlands, and for me, there was nothing to celebrate because we are still living in the colonialism system, and for me, it was like. For me to take a stand and to take this chance to show it to the other people, and also to make my Moluccan people aware of this, because it is the same system and different people, but then from my own country. So for me, that was the message for that protest back then.
And this is really a generational question, right? Like one of the ways that you're really speaking about this particular history is that there's a certain sense of pride and attachment to the Dutch government that you are then criticizing from a more decolonial perspective, where you're saying like, okay, but this is actually a mentality that we can break with. Does this make sense if I say it like this?
Yes. And I'm already doing it like for 20 years already. And I started first as an activist for the Moluccan people. And then it developed then I also used it in my performances, my poetry and my spoken word performances. And and about that, the thing, my grandfather is like the first generation, my mother is the second generation, so I'm the third generation here in Holland. So that's how they call it. And but the perspective is like so different because of my grandfather, they had to survive here in Holland because they came by boat here from the islands, like a lot of days on the boat. And a lot of them got sick. Some of them died also, and then they came here and they got fired. So that's from the first generation. The second generation, they grew up here. They grew up here as a child, and they lived in those the concentration camps from the Jewish people. And now that's not like you want to go and live in there, but the Dutch people put them in there, and they also got a bit of a survival modus. And for me, as a third generation, we also got and see all the pain from them. And that's why I try to translate it through my art to my activism, to the Dutch public here.
Yeah.
But from that footage was my last protest on the streets.
Yes. The footage is shared in the chat. It's a YouTube video. It's in Dutch, but you can also see it if you can see. To clarify, is that when you said about the boat, right? I think that for those people who do not know this history of the Netherlands, it's good to say again that indeed that it's people fighting for the 𝘗𝘯𝘪𝘥𝘦, which is the Dutch army, and then the promise of being taken to the Netherlands and the promise of being brought back, but then this never happened. So there's like a deep betrayal of the Dutch government there. Right. I just wanted to clarify that because some people might think, oh, the boat, but don't understand that this is the boat that actually was provided by the Dutch government. And I wanted to share now my screen so that people could see some of your performance work, because you perform these acts of commemoration in interweaving with your activist work through also performance and many other things also. I should not. Reduce your practice. Here we see it. For those who can see, maybe you want to also give an audio description of what we portray.
This is for a dance performance with children here in the Netherlands, in Rotterdam. And what you can see is that I am perform my poetry and performance also in like an Indonesian pattern blouse. But then another one, also from my grandfather. And my hair is blonde and short over there. Also a mustache and red lips. And today I have like more darker lips on. But that's on the picture, yeah.
I mean, I love how there's also this immediate question of gendering coming in through you wearing your grandfather's patterned shirts, right?
Yeah.
Here's a second slide.
Yes, this is on the left side. There are two pictures. On the left side, I am doing an opening of a restaurant of a friend of mine. She's also from the Moluccan Islands, also born and raised here, from the same generation, third generation. And I'm standing in front of a restaurant and I'm like shouting my performance, my poetry. Also with another pattern from my grandfather again. But then it was really hot with the short pants on from jeans. And I got like a headpiece and I made it by myself with some crystal stones. So yeah, that you can see on the left side, and on the right side, it's a picture of me wearing all white, a white jacket. I'm looking a bit like a samurai, a Japanese samurai.
And you're holding your hand also. Is that particularly?
Yeah, because of the sign, because on my face, I also had like a sign for a while, and I also tattooed it on my arm or my hand. And for me, it's a sign for me being non-binary and a soul being. On my face, you can see that it's a kind of the letter S, and then with a little bit like a Wi-Fi. How do you say? I don't know how to explain it, but that's the thing on my face, under my eye. So yeah.
I'll go to the next slide also.
Yeah, on the left side. There is the announcement for my wedding, and they surprised me, a friend of my wife. She surprised us to do the wedding on one of the biggest like queer festival in Holland, in Amsterdam, Milkshake Festival. And for me, it was like a big thing because of my Moluccan background, and my mother was not like loving it that I was like marrying in public. So for me, it was like also like a decision if I have to do this or not. But I did it, and it went real public on the also at the Amsterdam television. Also, they made like also footage about it. So yes, I was married there on the festival.
And you chose to do tattoos instead of rings.
Yes, that's also a thing because of my the Moluccan background, because we got like a tattoo history, and that has been erased by that colonialism back then, because the Portuguese people, they did that with bringing their belief system of the Christianity. So if I go back to the Moluccan Islands and the people see me over there, they're like looking at me like, why is she full of tattoos? But then they can see that I'm from Holland, so they know that from Holland, for Holland people, Moluccan people, it's normal. But for them, it's like still, it's like not done.
Because it's as much erased that people are judging it. And then also we come back with the Christianity, right? Like the colonial Christianity norms, and then how in the Netherlands Christianity is never seen as much as a problem, of course, because it's supposedly home ground. I wanted to ask you to round off, Olympia, because we end with this picture of you, and you have many more projects that we could be sharing, but since we're only getting a taste of each one, I would say, like, I want to maybe like return the question also with this marrying, right? Like, I have seen the video of the two of you marrying in this very public and also quite commercial festival, or commercialized queer festival. And true. I remember that there was a question from a media person, like a journalist, saying, oh, how are you feeling because it's finally possible? And of course, really celebrating this idea of marriage, gay marriage, as an emancipatory move, not at all referring to the fact that we should really question this progress, this so-called progress of marriage. And I want to ask you whether you want to reflect upon that.
I was thinking about that interview where you were talking about. For me, it was like, it wasn't a progress, same as the progress from the Moluccan people here in the Netherlands after 70 years. So for me, that is like on the same level. I know that some people need this platform to like identify themselves, but for me it was really a personal choice. It was really a personal choice, and like that was really, that question was really like, what you already said, is a commercial festival, so I couldn't answer that with like a big enthusiasm, because for me it was like a personal choice. And what I already said, it could happen that I didn't do it because of like my Moluccan background also, and I'm born and raised also with the Christian belief system, and so that was a bit difficult, for me also back then.
Do you recognize this, what also Dino has described, where the fact that you're out as a Moluccan person in your case is then taken up by neoliberal politicians to celebrate sort of that, as if you are a sign or a representation of progress because you're out? Like, does this complicate your relationship to outness? Does that make sense?
Yes. for me, like when I first did my outness, yeah, I was like, for me, I was like, okay, it was new for me, but I just did it because I cannot shut my mouth. So that's also my person. And but on the other side, I heard from other Moluccan younger people from my age. They saw it as like an example to identify themselves, but I can relate to that because you also had those terms back then. And first I called myself a lesbian, then I called myself bisexual, then I called myself this. But those for me, if I because I almost cannot say those things anymore, because for me it is like also a Western thing, and also the word queer is for me also a Western thing, and so it developed through the thing that I am now, and that's why I'm like how you say, embodying it in all ways now.
Yeah. Can we see you again so that we can look at your beautiful embodiment? I want to round off because people want to dance, and I want to continue this conversation forever. As I don't know, we have to do a reunion and just have a 10-hour conversation with all of the people who have been graciously giving us their speaker time. But I do want to, before I say, oh, that's dance, I do want to say, like, if one of the speakers, if you want to say something, the speakers, please do. This would be the moment. And then we can continue talking while we dance, because we can multitask. But I do want to open the mic to you all. Dino, Emra, Beren, Olympia. If you want to like share questions that we don't have to answer now, but if there's something you want to say. Maybe then I also invite the audience to open their mic and to just say hello. Teşekkürler. Thank you. Dankjewel. How are you doing? Are you okay? Are you out there? Yes, perfect. Okay. Thank you so much to our speakers. I see Kubra talking, but I cannot hear her.
Hello, yes. Thank you, everyone. I just want to add, I just shared Queer Waves link on the chat box. This link refers to funding to Turkish nightlife workers like DJs and drag kings and queens who are not capable of social support or any governmental support because the places are also closed. So, I mean, as we call Pride is also sharing, please go and check the link. And €1 is like 10 Turkish liras, just to remind you also. So that's all to mention on my side. And I would like to thank you again. And I love to celebrate Pride with you together. And let's dance. Let's dance.
Take it away. And thank you again to the wonderful speakers. And thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful event.
So,
thank you all. Bye-bye.